About 6 months after I got married, something big happened that shook up my life. My husband suddenly told me I had to take care of his dad, who was now stuck in bed because of an accident. This was all new to me, and I found it really hard. Then, out of the blue, my husband said, "Let's go chill in Hawaii while you handle my dad." So, off my husband and his mom went to Hawaii, leaving me to take care of his dad. They didn't realize the trouble their decision would cause down the road. My name is Mary, and I'm 30 years old. I've always loved cooking, so after finishing college, I got a job at a big restaurant chain. Now, I work in the planning department, coming up with new menu items. About 8 years into my job, I met Tom, who eventually became my husband. 2 years ago, I decided to go to my favorite Japanese pub alone. I sat at the counter, and next to me was Tom. We got talking and found out we were the same age. We hit it off and exchanged numbers. Tom started inviting me out to dinner often, and we began spending a lot of time together. He was funny and upbeat, and I found myself really liking him. It seemed like he felt the same, and we started dating. Eventually, we got married 6 months ago and now live together in an apartment conveniently located between our workplaces. Sometimes, I slack off on housework because we're both busy with our jobs, but Tom always reassures me with a smile, saying, "You don't have to be perfect at housework. I'm just happy to be with you." I replied, "I wish I could make fancier dinners, but I'm just happy to eat with you." Tom is always so kind, saying, "I treat the people I care about well. I'm so glad to be your husband." I feel the same way, saying, "Me too. I'm lucky to have you." Even after 6 months of marriage, we still have these sweet conversations. I thought our happy days would last forever, but suddenly, everything changed and our happiness disappeared. When I got home from work that day, my husband was already in the living room. Usually, one of us would say, "Hey," but this time, there was an uneasy silence. I nervously asked my husband what was wrong since he looked worried while scrolling through his phone. "Tom, are you okay?" I asked. He replied, "Hey Mary, I'm just really out of it. What's up? You seem scared." I explained, "Oh, it's just that my mom called from your mom's. Your dad was in an accident." I was caught off guard by his unexpected reaction. "What? I didn't expect that. Shouldn't we go see him?" Tom shook his head sadly, saying, "No, we can't." "Why not?" I asked, feeling anxious. "It's just not possible right now," he said. "Mom's taking care of him until he's better." "Oh no," I sighed, feeling helpless. His words made me realize there was nothing we could do at the moment. I let go of his hand and sat down on the sofa. I was worried about my father-in-law. He had just turned 65 and usually took good care of himself, enjoying activities like hiking and golfing on his days off. My husband works for my father-in-law's business, so I knew he must be feeling torn. Not only is he his boss, but he's also his dad. It was hard to imagine him being his usual cheerful self that day when he was clearly upset. A week later, we finally got to visit my father-in-law in the hospital. When I walked into his room, he had a weak smile on his face. "How are you feeling, Dad?" I asked, concerned. He scratched his head apologetically and said, "Mary, I'm sorry for worrying you." I reassured him, "Don't worry, I'm just glad you're safe." He nodded slowly, saying, "I'm okay, but I'll stay in bed for a while." Seeing him smile eased my worries. Unfortunately, the accident had left him with a spinal cord injury, and he was still paralyzed. He had to stay in a hospital for about 2 months for treatment and rehabilitation. Even after he was discharged, he would need ongoing therapy. While he was away, Tom decided to step in as president of his father's company. It felt strange to have my husband as the boss, even if only temporarily. As I was watching Tom and his father talk, my mother-in-law pulled me aside and sarcastically said, "Hey Mary, are you sure you're not confused about something?" "I'm not confused," I replied firmly. "Just because Tom is the president doesn't mean you can take advantage of him. Please don't do that." My mother-in-law shrugged and said, "I don't need to worry about that. I have a job and I'm well compensated." "Fine, but you knew Tom was the boss's son from the start." "What a nasty thing to say," I retorted, feeling frustrated. But it was all in her imagination. I didn't know Tom was the president's son until we had been dating for a while. Since the beginning of our marriage, my mother-in-law had been sarcastic toward me, and I didn't want to be misunderstood or disliked by her. So I spoke up. I didn't get with Tom for money. I was drawn to his personality. "What are you talking about? You act like you know everything about me," she shot back. "Well, you won't be able to fool me. I'll never accept you. Never." My father-in-law, sensing tension, asked, "What's going on?" "Nothing," my mother-in-law snapped, giving me a harsh look. Her words and behavior showed that she favored Tom. She probably thought I married him for money because we tied the knot after only a year of dating. Her treatment of me had been harsh from the moment we met at the wedding. I never expected her to be so mean. Even more troubling was that my husband adored her. A few days later, he said something that bothered me. "Mary, you know that my dad will be discharged from a hospital next month, right? We'll be going back to my parents' place then," Tom said. "Wait, why are you bringing this up now all of a sudden?" I asked, feeling caught off guard. "It's my mom's suggestion. It's a good opportunity for us to live together. She can't take care of my dad alone," Tom explained. "But it's not that simple to make such a big decision so quickly. We need to think this through together," I replied. "I'm grateful for your consideration, Mom." I was confused, but he was firm, saying, "Well, that's the decision. Just make sure you pack your stuff in time for the move." "But I won't be able to get to work easily if we move to your parents' place." "We struggled to find an apartment close to our jobs," I protested. "It's only 5 train stops away from my parents' place, isn't it? You're lucky you can even sit on the train in the mornings," he replied. It seemed like my husband and mother-in-law had already made up their minds about living together. Despite my attempts to discuss avoiding it, they ignored me. My husband became even more devoted to my mother-in-law, and his treatment towards me got harsher. He started lecturing me every single day. "How's the packing going? I won't be able to take time off work on moving day, so you'll have to take care of everything. You'll be in charge of all the household chores and looking after my mom. Don't let her suffer," he'd say. Even before the move, I felt mentally overwhelmed by his comments. With the company being busy, I was already juggling work and preparing for the move. I was completely drained, both physically and mentally. 2 months later, the move was done, and my father-in-law came home from the hospital. I barely had time to catch my breath, but I started a new job as my father-in-law's caregiver. I woke up at 4 a.m. to make breakfast and do laundry simultaneously. Then I hurried to my father-in-law's room to give him a morning massage and help him change clothes. I had to finish breakfast before my husband and mother-in-law, and once they were done, I assisted my father-in-law with his meals. Finally, after everyone had eaten, I could head to work. Despite all my efforts with caregiving and housework, my mother-in-law was never satisfied. She always seemed to find a way to delay me from going to work in the mornings. "Mary, can you spare a minute?" she'd say. I'd apologize. "I really have to leave right now." "What's the problem now?" "Are you complaining about breakfast?" My mother-in-law's words hit me like a ton of bricks. "I'll talk to you about it when I get back. Now I'm leaving. Don't argue with me. Just stay put," she commanded. I felt a headache coming on as my mother-in-law continued to yell. My heart started racing, and I felt dizzy. Whenever my husband or mother-in-law started with their unreasonable demands, I would get heart palpitations and headaches. But arguing with them only made things worse. The quickest way to get through it was to stay quiet. Because of my mother-in-law's constant complaints, I was always running late for work. My coworkers started to notice, and they were worried because I had never been late before. 3 months had flown by since my father-in-law got out of the hospital, but I still felt like I was running on fumes. After a long day at work, I had to rush home and start cooking dinner, but even my efforts weren't enough to please my husband. "What's the matter, Mary? I come home tired, and you're serving fish? Are you serious?" he criticized. "I'm sorry. I had to step away to help my father-in-law, so I just made boiled fish," I explained. "You should make something that gives me energy. I'm not interested in boiled fish," he complained. As my husband started making himself some instant noodles, I fell silent, feeling defeated. My mother-in-law looked smug. Feeling down, I went to help my father-in-law get ready for the evening. He noticed my distress and asked, "Mary, you look a bit pale. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just a bit stressed with work," I replied. "Is that all?" "I've been hearing a lot of arguing between my wife and Tom lately," he said with concern. "It's my fault. I'm not very skilled at a lot of things," I admitted sadly. "I don't see it that way," I replied, forcing a smile and fibbing to my father-in-law. It was the only way I could keep myself going. The truth was, I had always wanted to leave, but what would happen to my father-in-law if I did? I couldn't just walk away from everything. As the end of the year approached, I had some days off from work, but I spent them cleaning the house. Then, on New Year's Eve, my husband dropped a bombshell. "My mom and I are heading to Hawaii," he announced. "Hawaii? But we've been talking about this for a while," my husband explained, sounding nonchalant. "Wait, just think about your dad's condition. He needs you here. Besides, you're off work, so we should do something together," I pleaded. They both had smug looks on their faces as they showed me their packed carry-on bags. It seemed like they found my confusion amusing as they struggled to contain their laughter. As they walked out the door, my husband casually said, "You'll take care of my dad while we're in Hawaii. We're going to relax, so you're on your own." They both laughed as the door closed behind them. In that moment, something inside me snapped. "What do you mean, take care of him? Why am I the one doing everything alone? I can't handle being treated like this as a family member. I'm divorcing him when they get back," I thought, feeling a surge of anger. Despite my decision to divorce, I resolved to focus on caring for my father-in-law until they returned. I decided to stop doing anything around the house. The next day, I made breakfast for my father-in-law as usual and went to his room with a towel to help him freshen up. As I was doing so, my father-in-law smiled at me. "Mary, Happy New Year," he greeted me. "Dad, Happy New Year to you too. What happened with Tom and my wife last night? They seem to be in some sort of trouble," I asked. "They went to Hawaii," he replied. "Hawaii? Really?" My father-in-law sighed deeply and looked skeptical. Dad, let's not dwell on that. I'm sorry for everything. But wait a second. What are your thoughts?" I apologized and then asked for his opinion. I've actually been able to get out of bed on my own for a few days now. I was waiting for the right moment, but I never expected it to happen like this, my father-in-law explained with a smile, speaking slowly. It turned out that my father-in-law had noticed how unfairly I was being treated. I had asked my mother-in-law and husband to help me with errands, but they had ignored me. Additionally, the company's executive director had contacted my father-in-law, reporting that my husband, who was acting as president, was not following proper procedures and was abusing company funds for this trip. So my father-in-law contacted a company representative to monitor my husband's behavior. They discovered that my husband had been slacking off at work, which angered everyone. My father-in-law was supposed to take back his position as president after the new year, but instead he decided to fire my husband. Since the house was in my father-in-law's name, while they were away, we changed the locks and made plans to keep them out when they returned. As I went to the city office to pick up 2 divorce papers, a week passed. Suddenly, I heard banging on the front door and the intercom ringing repeatedly. It was my husband and mother-in-law just back from Hawaii trying to get in. I responded to them through the intercom. "Welcome back. How was your trip?" I asked politely. "Mary, open the door right now." "I can't open it," my husband demanded. "I can't do that. My father-in-law warned me not to let them in." "What? What are you talking about?" "Hey, did you enjoy your trip? You know that was company funds, right?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. I didn't know," my husband stammered, looking flustered. I couldn't help but chuckle as I watched their reactions on the monitor. Then my father-in-law, who had been listening in, chimed in from the side. "So you really used company money, son? Why, you're not even supposed to be able to walk," my father-in-law said incredulously. "I've been able to walk for a few days now, thanks to Mary helping with my rehabilitation, and the managing director told me about your shady behavior at work," my father-in-law explained. "Who's the managing director?" my husband asked, clearly caught off guard. "No, Dad, that's not true. You've been fired and you need to leave my office right now," my husband declared angrily. "Pack your things and get out." Through the monitor, my husband started to cry, pleading, "Mary, you won't leave me, will you?" He reached out to me. "What are you talking about? Do you have any idea how I've felt since you decided to move in with your parents without asking me? You, along with your mother, took advantage of me and forced me to take care of your father. Do you know how hard it's been for me?" I snapped back at him as he grabbed onto me. "Mary, calm down. I'm sorry. He apologized, tears streaming down his face. "Your apology means nothing to me. When you left on that trip, I realized it was pointless to continue this family with you. I'll be living on my own. I don't want someone like you," I told my husband firmly. He looked stunned as he backed away, and my mother-in-law rushed to support him. It was a heartbreaking scene between a mother and her son. Then my father-in-law stepped forward, holding the divorce papers I had received. He made them fill out the papers right then and there, and I escorted them out and locked the door. They pleaded with me to open the door, but my father-in-law remained silent. I haven't seen them since. Rumor has it that they're both unemployed and struggling to find a place to stay, sleeping in a comic book cafe and working odd jobs. It's a far cry from the life they were living before, but it's the consequence of their actions. After the divorce, my father-in-law told me, "I'll hire a housekeeper from now on, so you're free to go." I took him up on his offer and moved to a place near my work. Now I'm living a comfortable and fulfilling life. I'm incredibly grateful to my father-in-law for rescuing me, and I'm determined to repay him however I can.